A year ago, after my fiancé went bankrupt, I ignored my family's objections and moved into a rental apartment with him. I worked countless jobs, encouraging him to get back on his feet. On our 7th anniversary, I went home full of joy, only to walk in on him and his young secretary being intimate. The girl's moans complained, "Aren't you going back to the office? The baby misses you." "Let's tease Grace a little more," Liam coaxed softly. "Come on, baby, be a good girl and cooperate." Listening to the sounds from inside, I calmly placed the pregnancy test results on the table and called the doctor. "Doctor, please change the prenatal checkup to an abortion procedure." "One is as good as my figure," the girl said coquettishly, her voice carrying a barely suppressed tremor. I was holding a cake, and my hand paused on the doorknob. I stepped back and checked the apartment number. 1107, it was my and Liam's rental apartment. That's right. Could I be hearing things from too much stress lately? I shook my head, a smile touching my eyes, and reached out to touch my slightly swollen lower abdomen. Liam was going to be a father. I carefully tucked the pregnancy test results into the cake box. Would he be excited when he saw them? With a hint of anticipation, I opened the door. The next second, a familiar voice reached my ears, filled with a tenderness I'd never heard from him. "Lily, how could she compare to you?" My hand, gripping the doorknob, froze. My breath hitched, and with trembling hands, I pushed the door open. The living room was strewn with women's heels and Liam's tie. From the bedroom came intimate moans. My feet felt nailed to the spot as the woman's petulant whine reached my ears. "Aren't you going back to the office? The baby misses you." "Let's tease Grace a little more," Liam's voice was jarringly gentle. "Come on, baby, lift your leg higher." I stood outside the door, the cake in my hands falling to the floor with a splat. Frosting splattered everywhere. Just like my shattered heart at that moment. A baby? He had a baby with someone else? I remembered Liam as being ascetic and reserved, not fond of intimacy. Once or twice a month was all I could ever get out of him, and I usually had to beg. When he was with me, he always used protection. The only exception was last month when he was drunk and fiercely called my name in the rental apartment, incredibly innocent and passionate. Now that I thought about it, he was probably calling Lily. I remembered, his first love was named Lily. And my name is Grace. The pregnancy test results fell to the floor, caught a breeze, and curled into the scattered clothes. I bent down to pick them up and inadvertently glimpsed a necklace. The silver chain gleamed in the dim light, each gem exquisite and dazzling, showing its owner's careful selection. I touched my neck. It was empty. I used to have one, a gift from Liam before he went bankrupt. He had designed it himself, it was priceless, one of a kind. After the bankruptcy, we were struggling in the rental apartment, and I secretly sold it behind his back. When he found out, his eyes reddened, and he hugged me tightly, crying and saying he would buy it back. My heart was heavy. This necklace was casually tossed on lingerie, it couldn't possibly belong to me. Ah, a sultry moan came from inside. The next second was Liam's barely suppressed panting. "Baby, don't bite. The necklace. Where did you throw the necklace?" The woman's voice was faint, soft, and captivating, drawing out the last word in a sweet, enticing way. "It was in the way, so I took it off. But you worked so hard to trick Grace out of that." Boom, my mind went blank for a moment as I tried to process what she meant. Scammed? Scammed me out of what? Heh, scammed? It was yours to begin with, she was just insistent on having it back then. But if you like it, hubby will design another one for you. Liam's voice was gentle, and he chuckled softly. "Really, Lily, why? Are you hiding? How long are you going to keep up this bankruptcy charade with her?" His voice was incredibly casual. "Just to tease her. Who told her to be so arrogant and look down on everyone before? Now, after a fake bankruptcy, she'd come running." I didn't rush in to confront them, nor did I cry. I just quietly started a phone recording, then calmly walked into the kitchen and placed the pregnancy test results on the table. That paper still bore my and Liam's names, and that of our unborn child. But from today, everything would cease to exist. I stood before the Vance family estate, gazing at the familiar ornate iron gate, feeling as if an age had passed. 7 years ago, Liam was a penniless young man, and I was a pampered young lady, showered with affection. Just like in novels, I was spoiled, bright, arrogant, and bossy. Liam's family was dirt poor, his parents were divorced, and he lived with his grandmother. Every time I saw him at college, his shirt was faded from washing, and in the dead of winter, his hands were chapped and festering from the cold. One time, during a group book moving session, I had just gotten a manicure and didn't want to get my hands dirty. I leaned lazily against the wall and saw Liam helping his deskmate move books. Their fingertips accidentally brushed, and his ears turned red, incredibly innocent. A wicked pleasure came over me. I walked up to him, smirked, my eyes boldly fixed on him. 10,000, help me move books. He froze, furrowed his brow, but his hands didn't stop. He continued to bend down, deftly helping his deskmate pick up one book after another, his tone distant yet neither humble nor arrogant. Just a moment, let me finish moving lilies. I raised my hand to stop him. The boy's hand was cool, and my delicate, fair hands made his hands raw and chapped look especially ugly. I flung his hand away disdainfully, smiling brazenly. 3 seconds, no waiting after that. The boy's eyes suddenly reddened. He stared at me motionlessly. His expression brought out my worst side. I just wanted to tease him. I pinched his chin, and my long nail accidentally grazed his face, leaving a red mark, both suggestive and endearing. My red lips parted slightly, and I smiled with wicked pleasure. 1, 2. Lily tried to pull him away, but he avoided her first. His expression was cold, and he walked away before me, his voice hoarse and aloof. Where are the books? Good boy, like a dog, I praised in front of Lily, completely ignoring his suddenly darkening face, though his slightly reddened ears still betrayed his embarrassment. Lily couldn't take it anymore. She rushed out and stood in front of Liam, shielding him like a mother hen protecting her chick. She looked at me with displeasure, her tone resentful. Even if you're the Vance family's eldest daughter, you can't bully people like this. Has offended you in some way? To humiliate him like this? Of course, he hadn't. I just couldn't stand Lily. Why should the mistress's daughter live so happily? How could she take more than half of my father's affection? When her mother saw her father's messages with the mistress's child was 10, I was 12, and my brother was 17. My mother coldly watched as my father stayed out every night, openly spending time with the mistress's child. All her suffering was suppressed, and she was finally diagnosed with advanced breast cancer, passing away after treatment failed 5 years ago. This became a thorn in my heart. Once I found out Lily liked Liam, I decided to deliberately thwart her. Why should the mistress's child have an easy life? I wanted them both to atone for their sins. Later, Liam agreed to my pursuit under my financial leverage, and watching Lily's crestfallen expression, I felt incredibly satisfied. Liam would sometimes ask what I liked about him. It was ridiculous. Of course, I liked that he could make Lily miserable. Otherwise, he was dirt poor and so aloof he kept everyone at arm's length. Why would a beautiful, wealthy woman like me be interested in him? I genuinely thought I wouldn't fall in love with Liam at first. But a change occurred when my father's arch-rival secretly kidnapped me. I was preparing for her English proficiency exam that day and had stayed late practicing at college, so I had sent the driver home early. Walking on the dark street, before I could even hail a taxi, I was knocked unconscious with a blow and shoved into a sack. When I woke up, I was in a dilapidated underground parking garage. My hands and feet bound, my mouth taped shut, I was like a lamb to the slaughter, waiting to be butchered. 4 or 5 kidnappers tore off my clothes, leaning over me, wantonly teasing me. I couldn't move. In my despair, the garage door was kicked open. 3 against the light, I saw Liam's face, dark as ink. His usual calm demeanor was replaced by anger and fear. He strode towards me, covered me with clothes, and hugged me tightly, repeatedly apologizing. Thank you. Once the danger was over, I fainted on the spot. Due to the deep psychological trauma, I missed my English proficiency exam, and the opportunity to study abroad went to someone else. It was such a pity, and I deliberately ignored all information related to it. Later, Liam and I naturally got together. I accompanied him as he started his business, and I had my father and brother support him, and the office gradually took shape. It wasn't until after we got engaged that he suddenly told me he was bankrupt. It didn't matter, I loved him even if he had nothing, and I was confident I could help him start from scratch again, but had immense pride and stubbornly refused help from others. After an intimate moment, he pulled me aside and asked if I was willing to live in a rental apartment with him. He firmly believed that if he succeeded once, he could succeed a second time. I depended on him, so of course, I was willing. I insisted on enduring hardships with Leah, which made my father so angry he smashed a cup, and my brother directly cut off my allowance. At that time, Liam stood silently in the corner, his eyes downcast, enduring. Listening to my father's repeated derogatory remarks about him, I couldn't bear for him to suffer such treatment and resolutely broke ties with my family. Disheartened, my father disowned me. The entire circle mocked the pampered miss, who, for a man, was willing to humble herself, working countless jobs and then cooking and caring for him after work. They made me their gossip, looking at me with disdain whenever we met. At the time, I didn't care because I loved Liam. But now, thinking about it, Grace, didn't need to be so humble to anyone. Mrs. Back. Uncle, the butler, hurried over, his voice filled with long unseen surprise. But it's not a good time for your return today. The master and young master are not home, they went to an auction. Uncle's expression was a little hesitant. He took my hand and earnestly pleaded, what the master said before was just in anger. It's been 3 years. What father doesn't miss his child, right? Miss, please don't live outside anymore. He sighed, utterly worried. The young master secretly investigated behind the master's back. He heard you were working countless jobs, and he smoked and suffered from insomnia all night, so worried he couldn't sleep. But you know Marcus, he understands your temper best. He knew you'd get angry if he interfered with something you'd set your mind on, so he secretly cried at night. I listened, slightly surprised, and couldn't help but find it amusing. Uncle is getting on in years and loves to joke. How could Marcus have secretly cried for me late at night? Marcus was adopted by my parents from an orphanage. When my mother was alive, she had earnestly entrusted him to protect me well. And my father had always carefully nurtured him, hoping he would become his capable assistant. In my memory, he often had a stern exp. Ration, a cold and severe expression, an aloof demeanor, and rarely smiled. His shirt buttons were always meticulously fastened to the top, and he was methodical and rigid in his actions, almost to the point of being robotic. He always had a cold expression while bustling around for me. When I was young, I was spoiled and arrogant and offended many peers. They would secretly try to beat me, but he would silently punch them back, one by one. He treated me as a nuisance, often frowning, blaming yet helpless, and the most frequent thing he said was, "Grace, stop causing trouble." As my thoughts drifted, my emotions were complex. "Uncle, I'm not moving back in." I stood outside the door, my voice calm. I came back to get the villa keys my mother left me. The rift between my father and me had long been deeply rooted. My father cheated, and my mother died from extreme heartbreak, and now, the mistress's daughter repeatedly disrupts my life, trying to steal my remaining happiness. Besides, with Marcus at home, I was even more afraid to face him. I dared not imagine how he would see me. In his eyes, would I also be brainless, useless for a man? For Uncle sighed and finally stepped aside, his voice hoarse and helpless. "Come in." I stepped through the familiar door, feeling as if a huge stone was pressing on my heart, so heavy I could barely breathe. The furnishings inside were still the same, as if time had never passed, but I knew that everything had changed beyond recognition. Uncle turned and walked towards the study. I followed him, my steps light, as if afraid to disturb anything. He took a set of keys from a drawer in the desk and handed them to me respectfully. His rough fingers paused slightly, and his gaze was complex. "Miss," he suddenly said, his face showing regret, "are you really not going to wait for the master and young master to come back? They both miss you very much. Your family, there's nothing that can't be overcome." I took the keys, lowered my head, avoiding his gaze, my voice so soft it was almost inaudible. "Uncle, I want to go see Mom." Uncle said nothing more, silently bowing to me. I clutched the keys and turned to walk out the door. My steps were hurried, as if fleeing. As night deepened, I drove alone to the villa my mother had left me. The villa was located on the outskirts of town, far from the hustle and bustle, surrounded by dense woods, making it exceptionally quiet. My mother loved it here most when she was alive. She said it was the only place she could find peace. After she passed away, this place became where I remembered her by seeing her belongings, so I rarely came here. I stopped the car and stood in front of the villa, looking up at the familiar building, my heart filled with mixed emotions. The keys in my hand felt slightly warm, as if carrying my mother's warmth. The moment I pushed the door open, a faint sandalwood scent wafted out, as if my mother was still here, quietly waiting for me. The furnishings inside remained as they were during my mother's lifetime, as if time had stood still here. I walked to the sofa in the living room and gently sat down, my fingers tracing the embroidery on the sofa, which my mother had embroidered herself. Her fingers were nimble, and the patterns she embroidered were lifelike, as if every stitch carried her heartfelt intention. "Mom, I'm back," I whispered, my voice echoing in the empty room with a slight catch. When I was utterly devoted to Liam, wanting to start from scratch and endure hardships with him, my mother was so angry her eyes almost cried themselves blind. My mother painstakingly advised me that he was not a good partner. She said that Liam came from a difficult family, was very calculating, and might not genuinely treat people sincerely. But what did I say at the time? I looked at my mother with cold anger, sarcastically saying that she couldn't handle men, so she thought all men in the world were no good. I impatiently slammed the door. And, before leaving, casually declared, Liam is different from my dad, he won't be restless and cheat. I directly dug into my mother's wounds just to vent my own anger, completely oblivious to her secretly reddened eyes from crying. After that departure, I stubbornly refused to return and visit my mother even once. When's office went public, I proudly brought him home, wanting my mother to see how excellent the person she didn't approve of was. But instead, I received the news of my mother's passing. That day, I was abroad with Liam, handling clients. When the last call from home came, I was passionately kissing him on a boat. When I brought Liam home, the house was incredibly quiet. My father, uncharacteristically, didn't scold me, and my brother still had that cold and severe expression, his brow slightly furrowed, looking at me with a heavy gaze. His eyes seemed to hold 1,000 words, but he never spoke them, and I couldn't understand his gaze. For the first time, I feared they might be very disappointed in me. And my mother? Would she also be very disappointed in me? Would she regret giving birth to and raising me, raising an ingrate who only ever made her angry? If she knew Liam cheated, and with the mistress's daughter at that, would my mother be sick with anger and then hold me in her arms, painstakingly advising me to find someone else? I was destined not to get answers to any of these questions. Suddenly, there was a faint sound of footsteps at the door. I abruptly looked up and saw Marcus standing at the doorway, suddenly meeting his indifferent and aloof gaze. Why are you here? My mind went blank for a moment. He didn't answer. He stood there for a moment, his gaze sweeping over the furnishings in the room, finally resting coldly on me. Grace. He walked towards me, looking down at me, his gaze so deep it seemed to devour me. Marcus subtly frowned and spoke, his voice low and hoarse, with clear displeasure. Who let you in? My heart sank suddenly, and my fingers tightly clutched the embroidery on the sofa, my fingertips slightly white. I know I let Mom down. I lowered my head, not daring to meet his eyes. His intimidating aura made it hard for me to breathe. I truly know I made a mistake. My nose felt sore. Liam, Before I could finish, my throat was choked. Marcus's silence was like an invisible wall, pressing down on me, making it almost impossible to breathe. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my ears, and my fingers unconsciously twisted the hem of my clothes, my fingertips already slightly numb. Liam? He finally spoke, his voice as cold as ice, with a hint of undetectable aversion. What happened with him again? He scoffed slightly. Weren't you utterly devoted to him? His gaze was as sharp as a blade, piercing directly into me, as if to lay bare every pain in my heart. I opened my mouth, but my throat felt blocked, unable to make a sound. Countless images flashed through my mind, my mother's disappointed eyes. I knew that no matter how I explained, I couldn't change what had already happened. I tried to form words but found my voice trembling violently. I just wanted to come home. Home? Marcus scoffed, a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Didn't you say the rental apartment was your only home? I lowered my head, tears uncontrollably streaming down, cold and biting as they dripped onto the back of my hand. I knew Marcus was very angry. What I did was indeed very stupid. But I really didn't know what to do. My fiancé of many years cheated, and my father and the mistress openly frequented various places. The only one I could trust was the convenient brother I used to summon and dismiss at will. Marcus. He cheated, I sobbed, my voice almost inaudible. I know I was wrong. But I really don't know where to go. Marcus didn't respond. Only my suppressed sobs filled the room. After a long while, he slowly spoke, his voice still cold but with less sharpness. Leave, he said. Dawn. Let me see you again. I suddenly looked up at him, my eyes filled with disbelief. His face was devoid of expression, as if his words had been spoken casually. But I knew he was serious. Marcus. I stood up, trembling, wanting to approach him, but his gaze forced me back. Go, he repeated, his voice deep and resolute. I bit my lip and finally said nothing more, turning and leaving the room. The door closed softly behind me, as if completely separating us into two different worlds. Stepping out of the Vance family estate, the night wind blew over me, bringing a chill. I looked up at the sky, helpless and breaking down. Grace. A cold, stern voice suddenly called out to me. I turned back, tears blurring my vision. Marcus's thin lips parted slightly. After this, I want to see if it cures your blindness, to people's true nature. Marcus was very efficient. Within 10 minutes, he had uncovered the bankruptcy scam. The office was indeed bankrupt, but he had only publicly announced bankruptcy. In reality, he hadn't lost a single penny of capital. On the contrary, he had used the company's profits to register a new company called IG, which today showed signs of growing into something big. 6. No wonder, Marcus frowned slightly. Recently, the office has suddenly been maliciously suppressed by an obscure small company. Its name seems to be IG. My heart trembled. Just as I was about to speak to confirm my suspicions, Liam's phone suddenly rang. I cautiously glanced at Marcus. He shrewdly got up, his voice indifferently, "I'll go get a cup of water." Watching his retreating back, I answered the phone, my voice devoid of warmth. "What is it?" "Grace, we have guests at home." "Where are you?" "Who?" I asked. "Lily. You know her, right? My former secretary, she's excellent in all aspects. She's here to help me plan my future ventures." "Never mind, you wouldn't understand even if I explained it." As I listened, momentarily distracted, a sudden pinch at her waist through the fabric made me instinctively let out a tremor. The tone was a sultry one I'd never heard from myself. I looked at Marcus, who had returned, bewildered. He held a cup in one hand, his other hand on my waist, slowly feeding milk into my mouth, looking earnest, his voice hoarse and serious. "Drink all of it, don't spit it out." "I don't want to drink it," I said. I hated milk, and Marcus knew it. As I resisted, I pushed Marcus into the corner of the table. He groaned in pain. From the phone, Liam's furious voice demanded, "What are you doing?" Agitated, I hung up. "Marcus, what are you doing?" I looked at Marcus, my expression serious, my tone puzzled. "I forgot you don't like milk." He looked at me with deep eyes, his face calm, his thin lips parted slightly. "My apologies." "Marcus, are you doing this on purpose?" I wasn't stupid. Marcus wouldn't make a basic mistake, nor would he approach me when someone was on the phone. "Yes, I did it on purpose to make him misunderstand." I froze. It seemed Uncle's words might be true. Perhaps he really had cried for me late at night. "Do you think he'll find us here?" He placed the cup on the table, his fingertips accidentally brushing the back of my hand, and his expression faltered. "No," I scoffed coldly. "His first love is at the rental apartment. Do you think he'll still come looking for me?" Marcus's eyes darkened slightly, his fingertips lingered on the back of my hand for a moment before he pulled them away. His movements were gentle, as if afraid to disturb something, yet carried a hint of imperceptible reluctance. "You're always so confident," he said softly, his tone a mix of helplessness and something deeper. I looked up at him, feeling somewhat complex. Marcus had always been a composed and self-controlled person, never easily showing emotion. But today, his actions made me feel unfamiliar, even uneasy. "Marcus, what exactly do you want?" I couldn't help but ask, my voice carrying a hint of probing. He didn't answer immediately but turned and walked to the window, his gaze fixed on the distance. Outside, the night was deep, and the city lights reflected a hazy glow in his eyes. His back seemed a little solitary, as if out of place in this bustling world. "I just don't want to wait anymore," he suddenly said, his voice deep and calm, yet it was like a stone thrown into a lake, creating ripples. My heart jolted, and I vaguely guessed something, yet dared not confirm it. "Wait for what?" I asked instinctively, my voice a little tight. He turned around, his gaze fixed directly on me, the emotions in his eyes complex and difficult to discern. After a moment, he slowly said, "For you." I froze, my heart quickened, as if something was churning in my chest. His gaze was too direct, making me instinctively want to escape. "For me?" I managed a strained smile, trying to ease the sudden tension. "Marcus, don't joke." "I'm not joking." His tone remained calm but carried an undeniable firmness. I opened my mouth but didn't know what to say. Marcus had always been a calm and rational person, never doing anything without purpose. But today, his every word, every action, made me feel unfamiliar. "You know, I've always been waiting for you," he continued, his voice deep and hoarse, "but you never looked back at me." My heart gave a sudden tremor, as if struck hard by something. His words were like a key, unlocking a long-sealed memory box. The details I had deliberately ignored now vividly surfaced in my mind. The countless messes he had cleaned up for me, his reddened eyes when Liam and I left, and his helplessness when he called out to me after driving me away. Uncle's words echoed in my mind. 7. The young master secretly investigated behind the master's back. He heard you were working countless jobs, and he smoked and suffered from insomnia all night, so worried he couldn't sleep. But you know Marcus, he understands your disposition best. He knew you'd get angry if he and turf aired was something you'd set your mind on, so he secretly cried at night. Insomnia, heartache, secretly crying. Marcus. I called out to him softly, my voice trembling slightly. I looked at him, my mind in a turmoil. Marcus's gaze was too intense, as if it wanted to consume me entirely. I had never seen him like this, nor had I ever imagined he would have such feelings for me. I opened my mouth, but didn't know what to say. His fingertips gently grazed my cheek, his gaze obsessive and focused. After a moment, he lowered his head, slowly moving closer to my lips. I instinctively closed my eyes, my heart pounding like a drum. His breath grew closer and closer. I nervously clutched the hem of my clothes, my heart pounding like a drum. Just as his lips were about to touch mine, there was a sudden, urgent knocking at the door. Grace! Open the door! It was Liam's voice. I abruptly opened my eyes, and Marcus's movement also paused. His brows furrowed slightly, and a hint of displeasure flickered in his eyes. He found us after all, he said softly, his tone laced with sarcasm. I looked at him, my emotions complex. Liam's appearance felt like being pulled back to reality from a dream. Marcus! I called out softly, my voice tinged with hesitation. He withdrew his hand, his gaze still on my face, the emotions in his eyes complex and hard to read. After a moment, he sighed softly and turned to walk towards the door. I'll handle it, he said in a low voice, his tone containing a hint of disgust and revulsion. I stood rooted to the spot, watching him open the door, and Liam's figure appeared in the doorway. His face was somewhat anxious, his gaze sweeping back and forth between Marcus and me. What are you two doing? Liam's voice carried a hint of accusation. Marcus didn't answer, merely gave him a fleeting glance, then stepped aside to let him in. As rushed in, the atmosphere in the room instantly solidified. His gaze swept back and forth between me and Marcus, his face terribly grim, as if suppressing an impending eruption of anger. Grace, come home with me. Liam stepped forward to pull me, his voice cold and firm, an undeniable command. My anger turned into a mocking laugh, my eyes filled with sarcasm. Home? To that home where you and Lily were being intimate? Liam, how can you be so shameless? Liam's face changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. Why are you so sensitive? Didn't I tell you she's my former secretary, here to help me plan my future business? Forget it, you wouldn't understand even if I explained more. It's all for our future, can't you stop being so unreasonable? We have guests waiting at home, and you're here catching up with your brother? Have you forgotten how much they look down on me? Don't you know what's more important, and who can really help us? As if seeing my cold expression, he softened his tone, stepping forward and taking my hand, his voice gentle. Lily is thinking about the special fish dish you make. Come back quickly. I lowered my eyes and looked. My once fair and delicate hands had become rough, chapped, and peeling from working countless jobs. The scene of him and Lily being intimate in the rental apartment flashed before my eyes. I couldn't help but dry heave, quickly vomiting into the nearby trash can. Liam's face lit up with joy. He hugged me excitedly, saying, Grace, I knew you secretly left today's pregnancy test results. When did you put them there? I wiped my mouth and looked up at him, not missing the guilty conscience in his eyes. If my guess was correct, he was feeling guilty because he saw the pregnancy test results, and afraid I'd walk in on them, which was why he was so eager to find me everywhere. However, I had underestimated the extent of his shamelessness. He actually let Lily openly stay in the rental apartment and expected me to return and cook for them. I scoffed, a sarcastic curl of my lips, and deliberately said, just today. Don't you remember our 3rd anniversary? His face stiffened. I wanted to tease him. When I came back today, I heard a very strange sound. It sounded like a woman's moans. Liam frowned. What do you mean? 8, I said, who knows, maybe it was a streamer next door broadcasting something. He subtly exhaled in relief, then hugged me guiltily. I'm sorry, Grace. I'll work hard to build my business, and then I'll make sure you have a comfortable living environment. Just then, Liam's phone suddenly rang. He answered it, his face changing drastically. What? I'll be right there. His voice was clearly panicked. He glanced at me hurriedly, then turned and ran out without a backward glance. I heard the words Lily and kidnapped. The room fell silent again, leaving only Marcus and me. I stood there, tears silently streaming down my face. Having loved someone for 7 years, it was impossible not to feel pain. Grace. Marcus called out softly, his voice carrying a subtle hint of hesitation. I slowly crouched down, covering my face with my hands, my shoulders trembling slightly. Marcus stepped forward and pulled me into his arms, letting my tears soak his shirt. He's not a good partner. If you want the baby, keep it. If not, get an abortion. Marcus, take me to the hospital. The abortion was finished at 2 in the morning. The bright overhead light shone down into the hospital room. I lay weakly on the hospital bed, my face bloodless, my lips chapped and peeling. Marcus stayed by my side. His usually cold and severe expression was now tightly furrowed, his thin lips pressed into a firm line, radiating an aloof demeanor that kept others at a distance. He gently took my hand, his palm broad and warm. "You've lost weight," he said, his tone clear but with warmth. "No, I haven't. You were pregnant and still working countless jobs every day?" His brows knitted into a tight knot, his voice filled with suppressed anger. "Grace, do you think you're made of steel?" He subtly turned his head away, but his tightly clenched fist betrayed the turmoil within him. "Why do you have to put yourself through this for that man? Are you really that foolish?" His eyes were full of frustration with his failure to meet his potential. "If anything really happened to you, The words caught in his throat. He suddenly stopped, biting his teeth, and turned his head away, seeming to try hard to suppress the surging emotions within him. "Marcus, don't mention him." I closed my eyes, trying to block out all sounds from the outside world. Until's phone call came, his furious voice startled me. "Grace, where did you put Lily?" "What?" My mind went blank for a moment, and a numb, dull pain spread through my chest. "Stop pretending. You've been jealous of Lily since college, wishing she was inferior to you in every way. You have a bad temper during pregnancy. How do I know you weren't harboring jealousy because a spot in a prestigious exchange program went to Lily, and you kept silent back then, now seeking reckless revenge? You're too narrow-minded. Where did you hide Lily?" My eyes widened, as if stretched open by an invisible force, filled with disbelief, my lips trembling slightly, but unable to utter a sound. Tears streamed uncontrollably from my eyes, a wave of coldness surged through me. I instinctively dodged Marcus's concerned gaze, finding it absurd for a moment that this was the man I had loved for 7 years. "I'm at the hospital," Liam said impatiently. "What's wrong with you now? You go to the hospital every other day. You know the office is bankrupt, yet you keep causing trouble. If you were half as sensible as Lily, I wouldn't have. I'm here to get an abortion." Tears streamed down, soaking the pillow. I stared at the glaring bright overhead light, my voice calm. The voice on the other end cut off abruptly. "Can you stop making a scene? I don't have time to listen to you lying right now. Tell me, where's Lily?" I hung up the phone, tears blurring my vision. Everything before me became indistinct. I pulled the blanket over my head, my hands instinctively gripping the sheet, knuckles white from the effort. After a long time, I finally let out a suppressed whimper, my voice thick with emotion. "Marcus, I want to be alone for a while." Marcus handed me a tissue, his voice clear and gentle. "Okay, I'll be right outside the door. Call me if you need anything." He gently closed the hospital room door and stood guard outside, his gaze unreadable. Hearing the door close, I pulled the blanket down, revealing my eyes, which were vacant. It was as if, in Liam's eyes, I would always be that unreasonable person I once was. What about Marcus? How would he see me? Would he also think I was envious, vindictive, and too narrow-minded, always looking for trouble? Marcus radiated bone-chilling coldness. He sat in a chair in the hospital corridor, looking so gloomy he seemed to drip with coldness. His long fingers slid quickly across the phone screen. After dialing, his voice was cold, his eyes indifferent. "Thoroughly investigate Lily." Under careful attention, my body slowly recovered. That day, Marcus's office experienced a cash flow crisis, and he had to return to deal with it. The hospital room was too empty and quiet. The sun was shining brightly outside, so I wanted to go to the park behind the hospital for some fresh air. The park was across the street, bustling with people and traffic. I savored the long-lost noise. Suddenly, a black van screeched to a halt beside me. The door was violently pulled open, and several masked figures in black jumped out, quickly surrounding me. Before I could react, a handkerchief with a pungent odor was clapped over my mouth and nose. My vision went black, and I lost consciousness. When I woke again, I found myself in a dark, damp abandoned warehouse, my hands and feet bound tightly, my mouth taped shut. Fear, like a tide, engulfed me. I struggled desperately, but it was futile. I don't know how much time passed before the warehouse door creaked open, and Liam's hurried figure appeared at the entrance. The moment I saw him, a flicker of hope ignited in my eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the kidnapper's next words. "Liam, listen up. Grace and Lily, you can only save one. Make your choice now," a kidnapper shouted menacingly through a megaphone. Liam's gaze darted between me and Lily, who was tied up in the corner. He looked at Lily with heartbreak, his eyes filled with pain. When his gaze fell on me, however, it seemed wavering. My heart leaped to my throat. I watched him nervously, hoping he would remember our past and choose me. Lily's clothes were disheveled, her hair fell loosely across her face, and her eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. Tears welled up in her eyes, threatening to spill over at any moment. The moment she saw Liam, her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the ground. Liam. Her voice was shaky and weak, as if all strength had been drained from her, every word laced with a sob. Sobbing, I'm so scared. She sobbed incoherently, gesturing wildly with her hands, as if she had endured the most terrifying torture imaginable. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at me. I clearly saw a faint sneer curl her lips, but she quickly adopted a pitiable, helpless look. She sobbed incoherently, it's all my fault for being so useless. If I hadn't been kidnapped, Liam wouldn't have to be so conflicted, worrying back and forth between us. Unlike, who's always so strong. She shivered, her eyes dimming, but has her brother backing her up, so she doesn't have to be afraid of anything. Unlike me, all alone, I have to rely on myself for everything. When something goes wrong, all I can do is cry. I really envy Grace for having such a strong support. She swayed, delicately clutching her lower abdomen, on the verge of tears. I hadn't even had the chance to tell my love he's going to be a father again. But it's probably for the best, he's so busy, he'd be so sad if he knew. She smiled silently at Liam. I saw the necklace around her neck, and my face instantly went pale, as if drained of all color. My pupils constricted sharply, my eyes filled with disbelief. I locked eyes with Liam, only to see him looking at Lily with tenderness, his eyes red-rimmed and his heart racing with anxiety. My lips trembled slightly. I wanted to say something, but not a single word escaped. My hands instinctively covered my chest, and I felt a dry heave. I touched my flat lower abdomen, my heart turned to ashes. When I was in college, I was kidnapped. Though the kidnappers didn't succeed, it still left me with deep psychological trauma. Liam detested being intimate with me. Every time we were, he'd look at me with disgust, pinching my chin and sneering, so dirty. Who knows if someone else's stuff is still inside you? I obsessively relived that day over and over, tormented countless times, finally crying and telling him, I wasn't defiled by them. Now, a similar scene unfolded, but the target was Lily this time. Yet, Liam's gaze held no disgust, on the contrary, he was sick with worry for her. Enough. After a long silence, Liam furrowed his brow, his face full of impatience. His indifferent expression felt like a dull knife, slowly slicing through my heart. Grace, what kind of act are you putting on now? Setting aside what you're trying to prove, even if these were real kidnappers, the one I'd choose without hesitation is only Lily. She's pregnant, stop making a scene. I stood frozen, my breath hitched. My throat was so dry I couldn't make a sound. The kidnapper suddenly kicked my stomach, and my back slammed against the cold wall with a dull thud. My body uncontrollably curled into a ball. My hands instinctively covered my stomach. The color quickly drained from my already paper-white face, and cold sweat beaded on my forehead like rain, soaking the hair at my temples. The wound reopened, and blood gushed from below me. I wanted to cry for help. Liam. The moment I spoke, his eyebrows instantly knotted. He impatiently cut me off, looking at me but addressing the kidnappers. Whatever you're doing, I want Lily. Of course. With a strong push, Lily stumbled forward, falling into Liam's embrace. Liam. My stomach hurts so much. Lily gasped, her face pale. She gripped his hand, saying faintly, don't worry about me. Liam's expression was tense. He gently lifted her into his arms, not even sparing me a glance. Let's break up. He moved swiftly. As he passed me, his eyes were terrifyingly dark, his face cold. His thin lips parted slightly. If anything happens to Lily, I won't let you off the hook. I watched them leave helplessly, a warm, bloody dampness spread below me. 2 masked men came forward, dragging me out of the warehouse and all the way to the coast. The cold sea wind held, cutting at my face like a knife. I gazed despairingly at the turbulent sea before me, struggling frantically, but they held me down tightly. Boss, we'll cause a death. A subordinate hesitated for a moment. That woman paid generously, specifically requested she not be alive. I remember the last person we tied up was her too, wasn't it? So annoying, we didn't get her last time, and that woman have the payment. Heh, boss, she's going to die anyway, let our brothers have a taste of this woman. If Lily is happy, she might even add more money. The leading kidnapper's henchman paused, a malicious smile appearing on his face. All right, she can't escape anyway. Let the brothers have some fun first. With that, he waved his hand, and several of his subordinates eagerly crowded around. My eyes widened in terror, tears streamed out uncontrollably. I twisted my body desperately, but they held me even tighter, able only to let out desperate cries. Just then, a sudden, urgent sound of sirens echoed from nearby. The kidnappers, who had just okay triumphant, instantly changed their expressions. The leader spat fiercely. Damn it, what's going on? He frantically looked around, trying to find an escape route. Boss, what do we do? His subordinates panicked too, their voices trembling. Retreat. The kidnapper boss gritted his teeth, yanked me up, and held me in front of him as a hostage. They pushed me, step by step, retreating behind the rocks on the coast. Meanwhile, the sirens grew closer and closer, piercing the dark and desperate night sky. Losing too much blood, my vision blurred. I saw Marcus, just as I remembered, always arriving just in time after I got into trouble. His voice was indifferent yet helpless, as if he said again, just like before, Grace, you've caused trouble again. His figure seemed to be carrying the aura of a storm. His steps were hurried yet steady and powerful, each one seeming to land on my own heartbeat. Suddenly, I found strength. I bit hard on the kidnapper boss's hand and ran towards him without hesitation, my limbs weak, my steps faltering as I slid to my knees on the ground, falling into a strong, broad embrace. A familiar scent enveloped me, and my tears, no longer controllable, streamed down. I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat felt choked. I could only manage weak whimpers. Marcus held me tightly, one hand gently patting my back, the other fumbling to untie the ropes on me. His movements were gentle yet held a hint of urgency. It's okay, it's all over. He whispered in my ear, his voice trembling slightly. All his usual aloofness was gone, replaced by profound relief and concern. Buried in his embrace, I felt his strong heartbeat. Its rhythm was like my own pulse, a survivor's beat, over and over, making me truly realize I was alive. After waking up in the hospital, I immediately saw Marcus by my side. When he saw me trying to speak, he nervously handed me a cup of water. My voice was hoarse. The physical pain was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. Marcus, this was all Lily's doing. Yes, I know. I've already handed the evidence to the police. Marcus's expression faltered for a moment. He looked at me with a complex gaze, then continued, I also gave a copy to Liam. My heart trembled, but I smiled indifferently. Marcus, I broke up with him. Everything before this, I consider it having had bad luck with people. Marcus looked up. Do you remember that time in college when you were kidnapped and missed your English proficiency exam? He paused, then continued, that wasn't an accident either, it was also the work of Lily and her mother. Marcus, I figured it out. I'm not stupid, I could vaguely gather the whole story from the kidnapper's words. I hated them. It wasn't enough that they killed my mother, they even dared to try to harm me. Charles already knows about Lily and her mother conspiring to harm you. Marcus's brows furrowed tightly, his face grim. Charles had always valued his reputation immensely. He would never publicly spread such a disgraceful family scandal and make them a laughingstock. Marcus's words held a hidden meaning. Charles was probably planning to protect Lily and her mother. In an instant, a sharp glint flashed in Marcus's eyes, and he exuded an intimidating aura that sent shivers down my spine. Marcus sneered, his voice low and firm, the law won't allow it. From call records with the kidnappers to the transfer details of her hefty payments, every piece of evidence was irrefutable, leaving her no room for denial. He slowly peeled an orange, not moving. His voice was indifferent. Liam is outside, I didn't let him in. Marcus, I don't want to see him. As soon as I spoke, the door opened, and I met Liam's reddened eyes. Grace, I'm sorry. He never imagined that Lily, who had always seemed so sweet and innocent in front of him, could be so ruthless. Liam's voice was tearful, and his body trembled slightly. He still seemed to be reeling from the shock of Lily's true nature. I okayed at him, my disappointment spreading like a tide. I didn't want any more entanglement with him. The next second, his phone suddenly received a message. He instinctively looked down to check. In an instant, the color drained from his face, turning ashen. His hand trembled uncontrollably, and he almost dropped his phone. Grace, the baby. What happened to the baby? Liam looked up, his eyes wide with panic and disbelief, his voice trembling violently. I took a deep breath and said coldly, I got an abortion. After knowing about you and Lily, I had no reason to keep this child. Liam staggered back a step, as if he'd been sharply whipped, his face etched with pain and regret. You saw that day? But how could you? That was our child. Our child? I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh, though my eyes welled up against my will. When you were with Lily, deceiving and hurting me over and over again, did you ever think about this child? Liam closed his eyes in pain, gripping his hair tightly with both hands. Tears slipped through his fingers. I was a jerk. Lily blinded me, but the child was innocent. Grace, you're too cruel. Cruel? My emotions completely unraveled, and I cried out with a sob. When you and Lily conspired to trick me with the bankruptcy scam, and I was pregnant and working countless jobs, why didn't you think you were cruel? Where were you when I was kidnapped and struggling alone in despair? What right do you have to accuse me now? Liam slowly opened his eyes, his gaze hollow and despairing. He seemed to want to say something, but it was choked in his throat. His lips moved a few times, but in the end, he only managed a painful whimper. The room fell into a deathly silence, broken only by his suppressed sobs. At that moment, he seemed drained of all strength, collapsing to the floor, his hands hanging limply, like a loser who had lost everything. I'm sorry. I didn't know, I thought. Liam sat slumped on the floor, pain and regret engulfing high and like a surging tide. I looked at the disheartened man before me, but there was no sense of vengeful satisfaction in my heart, only endless exhaustion and bitterness. Grace, Liam's voice was so hoarse it was almost barely recognizable. I know it's too late for anything now, but it's okay, please give me another chance. His words were cut off by sobs, his shoulders shaking violently. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my emotions. Liam, you and Lily already have 2 children. Why are you still interfering with my life now? He abruptly looked up, his eyes filled with disbelief. Grace, how did you know? He pulled at me. Please give me another chance. I'll spend my whole life making up for my mistakes, please. I just found out you were the one who saved my grandmother back then. I thought Lily did it. She said you were always bullying her. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I pulled my hand away from his, my eyes reddened, my voice trembling slightly. What's the point of saying all this now? In your mind, haven't I always been arrogant, haughty, and overbearing? Liam's hand fell limply. His face was filled with pain and regret. I know, I was foolish. But what Lily and I have is just responsibility. The children's existence makes it hard for me to let go easily, but my heart has always loved only you. I let out a cold laugh. Love? Liam, your love is too cheap. For all these years, you two conspired to deceive me. I can't bear it. Liam took a step forward and said urgently, Grace, I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I truly can't be without you. I've already come clean with Lily, and I'll handle everything and give you an explanation. Just then, a phone call broke the tense atmosphere. Liam instinctively glanced at his phone, and his face instantly turned ashen. He answered the phone, said a few words softly, then looked at me anxiously. Grace, Lily was in a car accident, and the children are at the hospital. I have to go see them. My heart was a mix of emotions. Looking at his anxious expression, I said indifferently, go ahead. Liam hesitated, seemingly wanting to say more, but ultimately turned and hurried away. Watching his departing back, tears streamed from my eyes. Marcus remained silent throughout, watching me with a calm gaze. Marcus, I want to go abroad. Everything here felt like a farce. I didn't want to stay anymore. Okay. He responded. On the eve of my departure abroad, Liam found me again. He looked utterly exhausted, his eyes bloodshot. Grace, Lily is out of danger, but her physical condition is very poor, and she's pregnant, so she needs care. I know what I'm saying now is selfish, but I truly don't want to lose you, and I can't let her go either. Can you ask your brother to stop? Everyone makes mistakes, can you please forgive her? I looked at him, my anger gradually subsiding, replaced by deep weariness. Liam, you must know that mistakes have consequences. Besides, she's implicated in kidnapping, and it has already jeopardized my mental well-being. Liam nodded silently. He took a delicate box from his pocket and handed it to me. This is the necklace you sold back then, I redeemed it. I knocked it away, a cold laugh in my heart. How much longer are you going to keep lying to me? The bankruptcy was fake, your love for me was fake. Your only goal now is for me to let Lily off the hook. I don't want other people's things. Liam froze, his expression instantly solidifying, as if time had stopped for him. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a sound, staring blankly at the scattered necklace on the floor, its jewels glinting coldly in the dim light. Grace, it's not like that, He finally found his voice, explaining urgently and frantically, but the words caught in his throat before he could fully articulate them. I know, I disappointed you completely. Liam slowly squatted down, carefully picking up the necklace. But when I saved you in college, I.W. as sincere. His voice trembled, and his eyes flashed with painful struggle. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions steady. Liam, that incident was also Lily's doing. If she hadn't stirred up trouble behind the scenes, there would have been no need for you to save me. Liam stood up, clutching the necklace tightly, his hands slightly white from the grip. Grace, I respect your decision. But before you leave, I still want to beg you, can you please, for the sake of our past, give Lily another chance? His eyes were full of pleading, but this time, he couldn't move me anymore. She has to bear the consequences of her mistakes, I said coldly. I've done all I can. Liam lowered his head, silent for a long time, then slowly said, I understand, Grace. I wish you happiness, and I won't bother you again. He gently placed the necklace on a nearby table, turned, and left with heavy steps. Watching his departing back, my heart remained undisturbed. Afterward, the case proceeded normally. Despite efforts to plead for her and his hiring various lawyers to defend Lily, the evidence of her kidnapping was conclusive and the testimonies clear. The court ultimately delivered a just verdict. Lily was sentenced to a term of imprisonment for kidnapping. Even though she was pregnant, she could not escape the law's punishment. There would merely be appropriate humanitarian arrangements made during her incarceration. The day the verdict was announced, Liam stood outside the court, distraught. His world seemed to collapse at that moment. Not only had he lost me, but now Lily was also going to prison. He stared at the court's entrance, muttering to himself, how could this happen? As for me, I opened a flower shop abroad. While trimming flowers, I received a message from Marcus, informing me of Lily's incarceration. I looked at my phone screen, feeling no satisfaction, only endless regret. During my time abroad, I diligently studied and worked, gradually moving on from the pain of the past. Occasionally, I would think of Liam, recalling that time filled with pain and betrayal, but those memories no longer had the power to affect my life. Years later, I had established myself abroad, and my career was thriving. During a return trip to my home country for work, I chanced upon Marcus. He was as calm and capable as ever. After meeting, we talked about our experiences over the years like old friends. What happened to Liam later? I couldn't help but ask. Marcus frowned slightly, then said after a moment of thought, he was depressed for a long time. He poured all his energy into his children and occasionally visited Lily in prison. But then it was revealed that the children weren't his biological offspring. He went mad for a while, searching everywhere for you. In the end, the plane he took abroad crashed. I froze, nodded gently, and said nothing more. Past grievances and animosities had all become a thing of the past. Now, I focused only on my present life, looking forward to a beautiful future. The loves and hates of the past had, at this moment, become a thing of the past, causing no ripples within me. Seeing my silence, Marcus gently patted my shoulder, it's all over. Look forward, you deserve a better life. His voice was deep and gentle, carrying a reassuring strength. When we parted, Marcus looked at me, his previously aloof eyes now full of warmth. I look forward to seeing you again. I responded with a smile. The man before me overlapped with the stern-faced boy who used to help me with my troubles years ago. My heart quickened. What the future held, I didn't know, but at this moment, I was willing to let this vague but beautiful feeling develop naturally, quietly awaiting fate's arrangement. The